Well, good morning. Good morning to you here and those of you around the world in different places. And I want to thank our students from Washington Adventist University this morning for joining us. I think it's appropriate to thank them all again for adding to our worship experience. Well, today we are finishing up our series called Loose Ends, which has literally been that. You sort of each week a different topic, a different theme. And today I want to talk about a talk that none of us wants to have. And everybody has one of those talks in their lives. You know, it's that thing that's been hanging out there and you've put it off. It's into the weeks, maybe it's into the months, maybe it's into the years stage for you. And you know you need to, and you have hoped and prayed that that foolish belief that all of us grab onto at times, that it will get better if I just leave it alone. And it hasn't, and it won't, and at some point you gotta step up and deal with it. And today I want to talk to you about that idea of dealing with it all. But before we go there, I invite you just to bow your heads and let's pray one more time together, right? Father, this morning, we know that you've been here. We have experienced you in music. We've experienced you in words that we've sung towards you and to you. We've experienced it through a joint prayer. But hopefully all of us have experienced you in spite of all that. Because you're always there with us. And today I just ask that you would speak into my heart and to help me to face those sometimes painful, sometimes hard, and often very sensitive talks that need to take place. But through a lot of reasons, I just try to avoid them. Today I pray that not just I, but all of us can hear from your words written long ago that still carry the same weight and the same meaning for us, the same direction for us. And I pray that just again you would use this day to heal our own lives so that we can heal others' lives towards us and towards you. In your name, amen. I'm going to start off in Proverbs chapter 18. And I think this is one of those texts that if you're a Christian or been around a church very much, you've probably heard at some point, and it may be even one of the reasons that you don't want to have one of those conversations, because you don't want to say anything that's going to mess things up any worse than they are, and so you kind of hold back. But this was Solomon's observation on life, and he said, listen, what you say can preserve life or destroy it. And everybody in this room has experienced both of those meanings in your life, haven't you? You've had people speak sort of life into you and preserved your life by the words that they've said. Sometimes very intensely, sometimes just an offhand comment that, for whatever reason, stuck in your life and kind of preserved it. And you've had other experiences where people have said things, sometimes intentionally, sometimes unintentionally, that even to this day, just the thought of that sentence or that discussion or even just one of those words, even today, you can feel the pain from it. And Solomon sums it up by saying, so you must accept the consequences of your words. And again, I think it's one of the reasons that we sometimes avoid those discussions, because I don't want to, bring destruction to somebody's life, so I'm just going to avoid it and kind of go on, not recognizing that if we don't speak it out, if we don't take care of it, we begin to act it out. So let's do a little survey this morning. How many of you right at this moment know that there's somebody out there, not in here today, all right? Think out there for a moment. Somebody out there that you know you need to have one of those discussions with, and you know it not because they've ever said anything to you, but you can just sense it being around them. Anybody with that? I mean, it's true. You either talk it out or you act it out. And the problem with our acting out is that we're not great mind readers. And most of the time when people act out, we get a bad vibe from that whole thing. And here's something I want you to write down. There are conversations, not right, let's look at this. There are conversations we are not having or we are not having well. And this is a quote from a guy named Joseph Grenny. I was at a seminar this summer. He was one of the featured speakers. Crucial Conversations, great book, kind of hard to understand. Better to get the book and then watch him online and help unpack some of that stuff. But his whole point is that the people that have conversations well are people who have thought about these conversations, thought about their words, thought about what they're hoping to accomplish out of this, and actually are involved in those conversations in a different way than most of us are. Most of us have conversations because we have to have conversations. Not just normal conversations, but one of those kind of conversations. And it gets to the point where we just got to have it, and so come on in my office and we're going to have it, and most of the time it doesn't go so well, does it? And there's a reason behind this. Joseph Grenny would say, as children, we learn a myth that guides all future relationships. And it's true. And here's that myth. You have to choose between telling the truth or keeping a friend. And think about it for a moment. You can probably remember back way ago when you were a kid. At some point, maybe not the first time, but one of the first few times when you had to make that decision. Do I say something or do I just not say anything and act like everything's fine and just because I want to keep a friend? Do I tell them the truth or do I lose a friend? And it's a myth we believe because the reality is you've had other experiences in life when somebody very close to you has told you a very hard truth for your life and you've been thankful for that. And there's a reason. There's a reason that we struggle with this whole conversation thing. And it's not because of what we say. It's not the truth that we want to share, the challenge we have to face. Our issue tends to be, and people get defensive when we have discussions with them, not because of what we say, and not even always how we say it. It's about what they believe is the intent behind our words. That's why in your life, you can have somebody, you've probably had this experience. You've had somebody come and say something to you, and this one person said something, and you were all fine with it. Somebody else said it, and you were just fried, right? Probably even to this moment, you're still fried that they would have the audacity to say that to me. When somebody else who you know cares about you said the same thing, and you were like, yeah, you're right, I probably got to deal with it. What about them? Why would they say that kind of thing to me, Yeah, you're right, I understand. But there, we get stuck in this whole thing. And Joseph Grenny's son did this great video. I'm going to show it to you this morning. About how this kind of works, this idea of where we learn this and how it begins so early, this idea between choosing to tell the truth or to keep a friend.
Experiment. Feed kids wretched brownies, then see if they'll tell you the truth, especially when they think it might hurt your feelings. First, I made the brownies. Lots of chocolate, eggs and flour, but instead of sugar, I put in salt. Lots of salt. There's no way they could like these better. Now I recruit kids of various ages for a taste test. I tell them I want to compare ordinary brownies to my special brownies. My dear grandmother's special recipe. My dear dead grandmother's special recipe. Then I give them $1 for being such a big help. My parents always taught me that if you want someone to like you, give them money. Okay, here goes. First, they ate the yummy sugar brownies. Next, they eat the salt bricks. Watch this girl. She can hardly keep from gagging. And now for the crucial moment. Will they tell me the truth and possibly offend me? I asked them to point to the brownies they like best. No surprise that some tried to spare my feelings. But watch, even the one who gagged? And how about really little kids? But do you want to know what they really thought? Here, guys, I have leftovers. Does anybody want seconds?
Great picture, isn't it? And so true, and you know it's true. Because you can remember back, somebody asked me something, and you just went along because you were afraid of what it would do to friendships. But there's something I believe that's in all of us that wants to have honest relationships. Wants to have somebody who tells you the truth. And tells you because you know they care about you and have nothing but the best thoughts and plans and hopes for you. And the reality is, when it matters most, we do our worst. At least that's my experience. You know, when it's the most crucial conversations, it just seems like things don't go well. I mean, in my life, as a pastor especially, I've had multiple of these crucial conversations. I've had some. I remember one of the very first ones at my very first church. I had a situation I needed to go address a guy about, and got together with him, and he said, I figured you were going to come talk to me. So I thought, okay, good. He already knew I was coming, so we're not going to be a surprise attack on him. And we kind of talked about it, and he says, I agree, you know, you need to do this. You're right in doing this. So I left there feeling pretty good. I thought, man, I nailed this, you know. We had an open, honest discussion, got things clarified. He was already in agreement. He knew I was coming and knew this was the right decision to make. And by the time I got home, which is about 15 minutes, I had 3 phone calls from people who wanted to know what I had said to this guy, because he was really mad, he was deeply hurt and deeply offended. And I was like, but I just got done talking to him, and he was all fine with everything, you know? But you all know how that goes, right? We have a conversation, and then the person leaves the room. Let me rethink how this is. And you're probably telling some friends how it went. And I'm sure none of you ever do this, but sometimes this happens. You know, you're telling some friend how it happened, and I told him this. Now, you didn't really tell him that, but you wanted to tell him that. But at that moment, it feels good to say, I told him that. I told him how it was. I straightened them all out in this whole situation. What we need to do when it matters most, we seem to do our worst. And a lot of it, we feel threatened because we feel threatened, so we disconnect. And again, there's that underlying that the reason we have issues so often is not because of what we say, it's what people perceive as the intent behind what we say and how we say it. So we either talk it out or we act out, like I said. And Jesus captures this in 2 passages in the book of Matthew. Both of them, again, if you've been around a church very much, will be very familiar. First one is Matthew 18. We'll let you get that go back in your database for a moment so you know kind of where we're going this morning. Here's what Jesus says. If your fellow believer sins against you, go and tell him what he did wrong in private, between you and him alone. If he listens to you, you have helped, that is, gain one back, that person, to be your brother or sister again. Now, this is one of those passages we typically throw up when people are talking about stuff and not talking to the right people, and we say, listen, you shouldn't be talking to all these other people. You really need to go talk to the right person. That's how you get this fixed. And Jesus' intent is that you go to that person alone, because then you guys can fix it. You can be a brother or sister again, and nobody else has to know about this stuff. But we all know that's not how it works, right? Because before we go, we want to make sure that we're feeling right. So I go see Karen, and I say, Karen, you know, this is what's going on. And I'm not wrong in this. Am I, Karen? To which Karen's going to go, friend, truth? Oh, you're right, Mike. That's exactly how it is. And we go along, and I build my case. So I'm feeling really good. When I go to talk to them, I'm on the right side of this. And we go to straighten them out. And I want you to notice what Jesus said here. He says if a fellow believer sins against you, does something wrong towards you, you're to go and tell them what they did wrong in private. Fix it that way. And if he listens to you, which is the goal, and again, for them to listen to you, it has to have the right intent behind it. It's not there to straighten them out, it's there to reconnect us with somebody who's a brother or sister. If you have, you've helped that person be your brother or sister again. And Jesus' whole point is this: it's about restoring relationships, not about who was right and who was wrong. Second passage that Jesus talks about. So again, you gotta, somebody's done something to you, you're supposed to go find them. Second passage, found a few chapters earlier, Matthew chapter 5. And I'm going to give you a little bit of the back context. Jesus is teaching on the Sermon on the Mount. He's got all these big ideas he's throwing out, and he's kind of blowing up ideas, religious beliefs they've had. And he gets this one. He says, listen, as you know, long ago, God instructed Moses to tell his people, do not murder. Because those who murder will be judged and punished. There's a cost to murdering. But here is the even harder truth. Anyone who is angry with his brother will be judged. The same word as being judged for murder, will be judged for his anger. Anyone who taunts his friend, speaks contemptuously toward him, or calls him loser, fool, or scum, will have to answer to the high court. And anyone who calls his brother a fool may find himself in the fires of hell. Now let that soak in for just a moment. Jesus says, listen, if you're, you get mad at somebody, that's just kind of like murdering somebody because of the intent and what comes out of us. And he says, if you've ever said these things, the word the first word was raka, this idea of being a scum and being a loser is all wrapped in. It's sort of somebody who is just this rebellious person who doesn't really care and is empty, and you kind of put them down. Or to call them a fool. Hopeless. He raises the stakes. Then he makes this incredible statement. Therefore, because of those things, because of the weight and the cost and the potential penalties for how we speak to others, therefore, if you're bringing an offering to God, and you remember that your brother is angry at you or holds a grudge against you, not that they've done anything to you, but you know they got something against you. You haven't had the talk, but your actions have clearly communicate something, and you know somebody out there has something. Then leave your gift before the altar, go to your brother, repent, and forgive one another. Be reconciled, and then return to the altar to offer your gift. Here's the crazy thing. What Jesus is talking about is this idea of mutual conciliation after mutual hostility. And notice it's the exact same goal that Jesus had. If somebody's done something to me, I go talk to them, and if I know they got some kind of issue with me, I'm supposed to go talk to them. You keep saying, well, how come it's always on me? Well, if everybody was a me, everybody'd be going to find people, right? And so you wouldn't have people coming to your house, you'd have people passing each other on the road, because if you know somebody's got an issue, or if you got an issue, you go fix it between you. And both of them are the same idea, is that you can be reconciled. Jesus is all about reconciliation, restoration, bringing life back into things that have gotten strained, that have gotten stretched, that ultimately may have died because of something somebody said or something somebody did. Jesus connects our thoughts and words with our intentions and the state of our heart. And he says, don't blow it off that I just was mad and said those words. You have to take responsibility for those things. Because everybody in this room, or I'm guessing the majority of us in this room, at some point when we were fairly young, heard these words. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words, they will never hurt me, right? And it was something we learned as a defensive mechanism. Somebody says something, calls your name, and you can say, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words are never going to hurt me. And it was a way to defend it. See, it's not going to hurt me, not going to hurt me. But we all know that at some point words hurt, don't they? Sometimes you would have rather had a stick or a stone than a word, because sticks and stones cause some bruises, and you may heal from that, but words, they seem to stick inside of us and carry this huge, huge weight. Now, you may be thinking, well, that's kind of stretching on Jesus to make this connection between how we treat others and our own self, and can't we be mad at people because they deserve that we're mad at them? And I think what we need to understand is for Jesus, the connection that he makes back to Genesis chapter 1. It would have been very popular in his day. And all of them understood this idea that every person was made in God's image. So God created human beings in his image. That is, reflecting God's nature, his character, and representing him to the world. In the image of God, he created them. He created them male and female. All of us in this room today, everybody you've ever met in life, everybody you will ever meet in life, is created in the image of God. The image of God. And the value of that. How many of those that are parents, if I came to your house, would I find some pictures that you maybe put up on your refrigerator? Anybody ever had that had? I'm guessing if your kids are young enough, I could come look at pictures on your refrigerator, and I could ask, it's a picture of what? And I'm guessing some of you may not even know what it's a picture of, right? Really, that's a dog? Oh, okay, we'll say that's a dog, and that's a son. That's okay. We'll go with that. But there's a reason you've put it up on your refrigerator, and it's not because of the quality of the work. It's because of what it represents and who it represents. I mean, if you were to go to my mom's house, my mom has lived in the home where we moved when I was in first grade, and she still lives there to this day. If you went to my mom's house, you would find a variety of things around her house. From my artsy days in high school, you would find a picture that I drew for my dad for his birthday, I think it was. This huge picture I drew for him. And she has it up on one of the walls in one of the bedrooms, one of the guest bedrooms. And if you go, I think there's another spot you can go to my mom's house, and you would find this, I'm not going to call it pottery because that would be giving it too much credit, but you would find this piece of clay that's been dried and kilned and all that stuff and glossed. And it's kind of a round thing with an edge, and it's got like a ball or stick kind of thing. I don't remember the whole details. It's really ugly. It's kind of that mustard yellow that was really hot in the 70s. And you could ask yourself, why would my mom, after all these years, keep that stuff around? Why would she keep the picture up on the wall so prominently? But if any of you have parents like that you go back to their house and you'll find, something from your past and they've kept it, the reason they've done it is because of one simple reason. How you treat the creation reflects how you feel about the Creator. And that's why my mom has kept those things around. Not because there's any value in them. Not at some point I'm going to die and my art's going to become valuable because I'm not around anymore to make any more of these amazing things, She holds on to them because how she treats it is a reminder of what she thinks about me. And what if? What if how we treat each other as God's creation, as God's image, is also a reflection of how we feel about the Creator? See, one of the biggest struggles we have in Christianity is that we so easily separate our connection with God from our connection with each other. We tell ourselves, I'm good with God. I'm not so good with this half over here. This half's okay, but God, I'm good with. And it's pretty hard to be good with God and not be good with what He's created. It would be like your child coming to you and saying, Mommy, look at this picture. And you go, oh, sweetie, that's a lovely picture. Do you like it? Yes. Isn't it great that, this has got this here, look at all the stuff, the colors I use. Yeah, what is it, and you could it'd be great to go, thanks, and throw it away. You would never do that, right? because you don't want to crush their spirit, and you value that they took the time, but what they've created. And one of the ultimate calls throughout the Bible is the idea of we have to recognize there is no separation between God and us. Kind of Jesus statement. What's the number one commandment, Jesus? And even Jesus couldn't bring it down to one. Did you notice that? He said impossible. You've asked an impossible question. I can get you to two that are sort of like one because they're halves of the same one. Love God with everything, all your strength, all your mind, all your emotions, all your energy, and to love everybody else like you love yourself. That's the one commandment that he couldn't get down to one. And it's this constant call of God into our lives to be connected with him, to be followers of him. How we treat or fail to treat others are actions not just against them, but God and even ourselves. See, if I don't value the image of God in you, it's kind of hard for me to value the image of God in me. And what if? What if in protecting the image of God in them, we just might, in the process, be protecting the image of God in us? Because how I treat you really does come back to how I treat me. It really does have a reflection on how I treat God. So we're going to get real practical just for a couple of minutes and take a little bit of a step away. Oftentimes we fail to have these conversations. We've already kind of established that. But in failing to have these conversations doesn't mean we don't have conversations. How many of you have ever said to yourself, at some moment you're having a conversation with somebody and somebody's telling you some information or you're giving them some information and you're not really sure if it's gossip or not? Anybody else had that thought? You know, you're going along and you're thinking, is this gossip? I'm not so sure. I better listen to some more to find out if it is. Still not quite sure. Yeah, I think it is. Or no, it maybe isn't. And in Christianity and churches, we have great ways of getting around this. You know, I'm just somebody who cares about them, and so I want to share the information with you. We need to pray for so and so. Why? Oh, let me tell you why. You know, we're just praying. You know, we kind of cover all these bases. And actually, I didn't put the text up here, but not even God's top 10s of things that he hates, top 7 things that he hates. One of them is this idea of gossiping. And the reason is of what it does to one of God's creations. And the reason he hates it is exactly what Jesus said, that it's our responsibility if somebody's hurt us, that we have to go have that conversation to try to restore that relationship. And if somebody's got something against us, then it's up to us to say, I got to go engage this because I don't want that disconnect to be there any longer. So Proverbs again, two different Proverbs, Proverbs 16:28 and Proverbs 26:20. A devious person spreads quarrels. And you all have met people like that, right? The people that just love to stir stuff up. You know, they just like to have stuff stirred up and then they kind of step back and let all the stuff happen. And they just kind of get this inner joy out of stirring stuff up. And a gossip separates the closest friends. And I'm guessing that there's some of you sitting here today that have experienced that in a very real and painful way. That you don't have some friendships today that were so meaningful to you at some point because some kind of gossip got entered to it. Whether they said something or somebody said something to you and it just got wound around. And it's broken this up. Without wood, I love this, a fire goes out, right? I mean, it's logical, right? Nothing to burn, nothing to burn. And without gossip, a quarrel dies down. And isn't that really what Jesus was talking about? Trying to let these things die down. Not putting out some wood all over the place, but letting these things die down. Dealing with those things. So, that's it. Let me talk to you about, just real briefly, how to help the fire go out. Because I think it's up to us, as followers of Jesus, those of us in this room today who are followers of Jesus, but even if you're not a follower of Jesus, I think it's still up to you. that you have a responsibility to recognize how you speak and how you act and all that kind of stuff. So how to help the fire out? Number one, accept that what you permit, you promote. That what you permit, you promote. In other words, if somebody's gossiping to you and you think, I know it's not good to gossip, so I'm not really going to listen while they tell me this stuff. No, I'm not going to listen. You just kind of, by being silent, you really permit that and you really allow it. So there's some options. You can do sort of the subtle way. I'm not really so comfortable, Dave, having this conversation. I'm just going to step back. You can do it the caring way. Hey, Dave, I'm not sure that so-and-so is going to, would feel comfortable with us having this discussion. You can do it the biblical way. Have you talked to them yet, Dave? Or you can do it just the very confrontational way. Well, I'm not gossiping and I'm not going to have any of this stuff, and if you are, I'm out of here thing. Whatever way you do it, you got to figure out a way to disengage that and to model and to prevent yourself, because when you allow gossip to come into your life, you have now entered into a sacred relationship that was between that person and the other person, and you have thrust yourself in there. And I'm going to guess that a lot of times when you've been part of gossip, you find out years later or even months later that you didn't really have all the information. You didn't have all the facts, and when you got all the facts, it was a little bit different story. And that's why Jesus says, when you got a problem, just go and fix it between you two, because we don't need to spread this around. We don't need more people to get burnt by this fire. Because Jesus, God, is all about restoration. Who was right or who was wrong. Second way to help it. Believe the best rather than assume the worst. If we just did this one thing, life would be so much better for all of us. And for some of us, the way we're wired, I'm not wired this way, but I have to work hard at this way. I told you before, I'm a cynical, sarcastic pessimist by nature. I grew up in a policeman's home. You don't trust anybody. Keep an eye on everybody, Great way to stay safe in life. Not a great way to live in life, though. And to really, when you hear stuff, to say, I don't really feel comfortable with this, and I want to assume the best, as opposed to assuming the worst of somebody. And lastly, we need to remember that we serve a God of good news. And it's not gossiping if you share good news with somebody. If you say, hey, how are you? And so-and-so, they just got their brand new house. They're getting married. No, that's not gossiping. It's gossiping if you say they got their new house. I wonder how they afforded that, that whole stuff, But we serve a God of good news. And if it's good news, then it needs to be good news, right? And it's God's call, God's appeal to all of us to have those conversations. And to have those conversations in a setting that my goal is that when we get done with this conversation, you and I, we're going to be good. You and I are going to be back to being brother and sister. You and I are going to be back to being together in this versus you're over there and I'm over here. When I go to see you and I say, you may have heard something about me, or I may have said something offhand, or something may have taken place, and I kind of get the sense that you're not happy with me. I want to make that right. I want to apologize. I want to own it. And I want us to be right, because being right honors the image of God in them. It also honors the image of God in me. Because God really is a God of good news. With that said, I want to invite you to take out the Connect card that Pastor Jason mentioned earlier. I have a short someplace, so I'm not going to sit down anymore. Here's some possible next steps to take today. Maybe your next step is simply to rethink how I have conversations and why I avoid some of them. Maybe you just need to process of why are these so tough, and is there part of my story that's part of that? Is there a reason that I don't want to engage this because of me? Maybe your next step is to recognize that how I talk about and to others is a reflection of how I see God. To really process that. Or maybe your next step is to honestly ask, are my conversations good news?